So, today we're going to dive into the history of immigration to the United States, and it's a story that's really all about one thing: constant, and I mean dramatic, change. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so let's just start with a question. When you think of a typical American immigrant, who pops into your head? Is it a pilgrim from the 1600s? Maybe an Irish factory worker from the 1800s? Or is it someone arriving from Latin America or Asia today?
Well, the thing is, there is no single answer. Not really. The face of immigration has never just been one thing. It's been constantly evolving, shaped by everything from what's happening around the world to what the economy needs to a few landmark laws.
To really get this, we've got to go way back, right to the very beginning. Because back in the 1600s, the story of American immigration actually started with two totally different migrations happening at the same time.
And I mean, you just can't get two more different stories. On one side, you have European settlers coming voluntarily from places like England and the Netherlands. They were looking for things like religious freedom or a shot at a better life. But on the complete other side, you have hundreds of thousands of Africans who were forcibly brought here through the transatlantic slave trade. These two streams, one of choice, one of pure coercion, they laid this really complex and conflicted foundation for the whole country.
All right, let's fast forward a bit to the 19th century, because this is where the story really starts to scale up. America was in the middle of this crazy industrial boom, and all that growth needed a massive workforce. To build the railroads, work in the factories, and what did that do? It kicked off these huge waves of immigration from Europe.
In the early part of the century, pretty much everyone was coming from Northern Europe. I mean, look at that number, 95%. That's staggering. Think about events like the devastating Irish potato famine. It pushed millions from Ireland, Germany, and Great Britain to pack up and seek a new life across the ocean.
But you know how it goes, that didn't last. By the late 1800s, there was a major shift. The main sources of immigration changed from Northern Europe to Southern and Eastern Europe. Suddenly, millions were arriving from Italy and Russia. This era also marked a huge turning point. The government started getting involved, passing the first real restrictions, starting with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which was driven by a lot of economic fear and racial prejudice.
And this brings us to, honestly, one of the biggest turning points in the entire story. A single law in the mid-20th century that would completely redraw the map of U.S. immigration forever.
See, for decades, the U.S. had this thing called the National Origins Quota System. What was it? Well, it was basically a set of rules that put really strict limits on who could come in, and it was designed to heavily favor immigrants from Northern Europe. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, it just blew that whole system up. It was a radical change, and it was about to transform the country.
And the effect was, well, it was immediate. And it was huge. It's like someone said, this act opened the door to immigration from non-European countries. And boy, did it ever.
And you can see that shift right here. I mean, it was seismic. After 1965, about half of all immigrants were coming from Latin America, another quarter from Asia. Europe just wasn't the main story anymore, and this was a direct result of that one law.
And that really sets the stage for today, right? The legacy of that 1965 Act is the global pattern of immigration we see all around us now. It's more diverse than ever.
So when we look at the major sources of immigration in our modern era, it's a completely different map. We're talking about countries like Mexico, China, India, and the Philippines taking center stage in the American immigration story. And this wasn't just a fluke. The trend got another push in 1990, when the laws were changed again, this time to actively promote even more diversity, making the flow of people coming to the U.S. more varied than at any other point in history.
Okay, so we've gone on quite a journey here. Let's step back for a second and just look at the big picture, the whole story of this transformation that we've just walked through.
It really comes down to three big chapters, right? First, you've got the colonial two streams era, with voluntary Europeans and involuntary Africans. Then came the massive European waves that powered the 19th century. And finally, the global shift after 1965, which completely reoriented immigration toward Latin America and Asia.
And that brings us right back to the beginning. Every single chapter of American history has had a different answer to that question: who is an immigrant? So if history has taught us anything, it's that this story is always changing. Which makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the next chapter going to be?